on finding love for humanitarians or seeking love or whichever way you want to interpret it. Essentially, we're calling it humanitarian love with Pauline. Hi, Pauline.
Hi, Asel. Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
Exactly. So we are continuing our tradition of talking about love in different versions and formats. And today, the topic that I thought we could talk with Pauline about is the topic of no one is out there for me, no one is available. Essentially, the version of I'm giving up or I don't want to be searching for anymore because I can't find the person that I want, right? Be it a woman, men, whoever you're searching for. And so we want to talk about how that belief can affect the way we show up and how it can affect our lives, and also what can we do about it if that's not really what we're wanting as a result, basically. So maybe we start with the simple question of what do you think, or why do you think people essentially think about it, or why do you think people come to this conclusion? Colin, what would you say?
Maybe there's different level of explanation. The first level of explanation that is probably available to people that is in the awareness is seeing the circumstances and taking the circumstances around them as the truth. Like there is nobody around me, there's nobody who is available, I can't find anyone. So reaching this idea of scarcity and believing it that it is like hardest truth, like there's nobody out there for me, like that's it. But as we were starting to chat, there's probably other reasons for that, and maybe you want to talk about it, Asel, as you were mentioning before.
Yeah, so because I was thinking about it as well, and I definitely had this belief as well when I was searching for love, and now reflecting back about it, I think it was more like an avoidance strategy rather than a strategy of, okay, I'm no longer searching for anyone else because I'm done with it, right? It's because I was thinking most of the time this belief sounds like a conclusion, like you're saying, right? We looked around, we didn't find, this is a conclusion, I'm no longer searching for someone kind of a belief. But then I was asking myself, why would I be believing this, right? What's the purpose of me believing there's no one around me? And the answer that comes to me is because I don't want to get hurt again. I don't want to get disappointed that I don't find anyone that I'm looking for. And therefore, I rather conclude that there's no one, right? It's a bit like um, a I don't know, defense mechanism, right? Like we want to protect ourselves, which is very understandable, especially after several disappointments. We don't want to be disappointed again. So that's why we rather want to continue believing that there's no one out there than going and being vulnerable and finding or looking for someone else. But then I was thinking the irony there, unfortunately, is that we are disappointed, frustrated either way. So if we continue believing there's no one out there, we are frustrated, disappointed, even though we may not admit to ourselves oftentimes. And if we continue on being vulnerable, we may again come to that experience again, right? So the question is, which one do you choose? And I would advocate for choosing for keep looking for, but I know if I say that, probably people are already not liking me, and that's okay. because because we'll be talking about the consequences of keep believing this thought of no one's out there, right? So maybe this will clarify what I mean when I say keep looking instead of giving up and saying, well, you see, there's no one out there. So what would you say, Pauline, the consequences of, I guess, at any stage of our lives saying, this is it, I'm done. I'm like closing the shop, going, I don't know. It's like whatever the
Yeah.
analogy you're thinking of. What would you say the consequences of it?
Well, whether it is permanent or not, or whether it's just like the thoughts, because for me, the thought like there's nobody out there for me, or nobody is available, or some variation of this thought is very common. First, I wanted to absolutely normalize this, that this is a thought I used to have. Some people at some point, yes, when it's like wanting to close the shop, to use your analogy, the idea might be temporary, that might not be permanent, right? But sometime there is this, for me, it's coming with end of hope, end of belief, end of trusting that it's going to happen. So it's like, okay, I might as well, just shut down. And one of the impacts is, yes, is stopping, not taking actions anymore, choosing not to put yourself out there. And as our public is mostly humanitarian, I indeed saw this in clients I work with, but also in forums like Facebook groups where women especially were changing and were saying, yeah, I give up. Like I gave up on the chase. Huh? So the chase or this desire, it depends how you want to see it. But yes, one of the possible consequence of having this thought is the feeling of being stuck, of losing hope, and of giving up. And so of course, if you give up putting yourself out there, if you give up yeah, trying to meet people, of course, the potential for it to happen is much lower than if you are actively believing and actively making efforts and taking steps to meet your person. So that's another
Yeah,
consequence. Yeah.
exactly. And I think what I was also thinking of is the biggest consequences for me at the time when I was thinking about it, and like you were saying, it was temporary. But what I was thinking about is I think that it was getting me to a bitter state. And I
Mm,
know it's maybe an extreme example, but this is what I remember experiencing myself of like being this person who says, well, you see, like confirming my core beliefs at the time of I'm not loved, I'm not worthy, or whatever the version that I was thinking about, right? And or I'm not beautiful, or I'm not desirable, or whatever the version. And this next thought was like confirming that you see, this is what it is.
mhm,
Um, and and it was a bit like an additional evidence to beat myself up, an additional like tool to stay even more bitter and say I can't be helped. Basically, I know I'm exaggerating because in my experience this was very extreme, and I don't
yeah,
think people experience it maybe this way, but I'm just like sharing how I remember feeling about it, right?
yeah,
So that's why I think we will come to talking about what to do about it, but whatever the experience you're having, it might be even exacerbated by other beliefs you hold to be true about yourself or about your situation, and then you jam everything together and then you make it sound like I'm going to be only dedicating my life to work, or I'm going to be only this, or I'm going to be alone, or, we then make it even
yeah,
like more of other things that may not really be true. So that's why um, consequences can be that you may not really desiring, right? So that's
yeah,
why I was saying that instead of staying in that mindset of being stuck and feeling this bitterness or whatever the other feelings you're feeling, I think the better way, the easier way is actually continue looking for the love you want to. This is why I was saying that I want to advocate for continuing searching rather than giving up or saying this is it.
mm, yeah.
So yeah,
For
you want to say something?
if it's okay, Asel, just to go in the same direction. You talk about bitterness. For me, the first consequence is powerlessness.
Yes,
And we
exactly.
talk about, we took today one limiting belief, and it's a
Yeah.
belief that is limiting. So limiting in terms of either bitterness, either hopelessness, either powerlessness. So the idea that it limits you. But I wanted to go back actually on when you mentioned, like we start talking about the consequence and the impact of having this thought, but completely go into your direction in how limiting belief, such as there's nobody for me, nobody out there for me, are exactly a symptom of a previous wound. So you were talking about your example, but I think we have mentioned this in previous episodes that for me, the core wounds that I see over and over, preventing people to have, a thriving love life, is limited self-love or self-worthiness or self-esteem, and or fear of intimacy. So for me, I see that these are really the core wounds, but yes, how it shows up and how you can actually recognize that you have these wounds are some of those limiting beliefs, some of these conditions, some of these thoughts that you can point out, that you can notice you are having them and they're not helping you. So when you say, yes, there's nobody around me, potentially it can be an avoidance strategy, it can be a defense mechanism that your brain is creating this belief. And maybe to add in a little bit of element of how the mind works, because we probably have mentioned that already, but the mind is not very rational and always helpful. So whatever we already think, whatever we already believe, whether it is helping us or not, our mind is very diligent and is going to try to prove it to us. So if for whatever reason, maybe you've been wounded in your childhood emotionally, maybe you've been hurt, you felt abandoned, rejected, and you have this wound around love, relationship, and then you start having this idea, maybe it is true that at some point there's less people interest around you, and you start saying, okay, there's nobody out there for me, and you have these thoughts, and your mind is going to prove it to you over and over again. You're going to find a confirmation. You're going to meet someone, not going to work out, to say, see, I told you there's nobody out there for you. And you're going to be giving more credit, and you're going to trust more the thoughts that go in that direction, even if it makes you feel bitter, powerless, hopeless, desperate, all of those feelings that are not so comfortable, not so pleasant, um, because it takes less energy for your brain to go there than to start opening up again and feel like, oh, what if it was not true? You know? And this we start going a little bit maybe in the solution already in how to change that.
Exactly. Yes. So one of I think the key solution that I really love is recognizing if it's a conclusion you want to actively take, meaning I've decided I didn't meet the person I want to, and therefore I'm okay with being on my own in living the life I want to. That's amazing. Do that. But let's take an active decision, meaning um, do it from the place of this is your decision rather than this is what happened and I didn't really want it. And then, like, from the powerlessness place that we often come, right? So, if it's a conclusion you want to have it, be aware, like, do it from the place of empoweredness of saying, this is what I've decided. If it's something that you are using as a complaint or as a reason why you are this and you are that, then notice that this is just the thought that you're choosing it, and these are not facts, even though it will very much sound like a fact. And it will be like, well, the sky is obviously blue. What are you telling me? Right? But that's not the case. So the wonder of beliefs is that we can't even recognize their beliefs unless someone points it out to us. So that's why notice that this is a belief you're holding, and maybe the reasons why is because you're trying to avoid another disappointment, or because you're finding that's easier. Whatever the reason is, ask yourself if you're okay with that reason, because whatever the reason behind it is, I promise you, you can process it, you can work through it, and then continue searching for the person you're wanting to find. So I'm just, I guess, advocating, don't let those disappointments, frustrations, the previous experiences, the past, to hold you from achieving what you want. Because oftentimes I think we hold on to those so much because we haven't really processed them, and therefore it's so difficult to move forward because our bodies are reminding us, well, if you go forward, you're gonna have this is gonna happen to you again. You will suffer again, and you don't really want this, right? So I can't tell you how many times I have done it and how many times I've suffered through. But then now looking at my relationship, I'm thinking I'm so happy that I have done it, right? Even though it has been like a lot of the ups and downs a lot of the time, but I'm happy that I'm able to currently have the relationship the way I want to. So that's why I wanted to put it out there. Pauline, any other suggestions people can
Yeah,
take?
well, I think we will talk about more limiting beliefs, so we will come back because I think we gave already quite a lot of information, but it's hard to see the difference if you're not used to work with thoughts, with seeing what is, oh, is it the reality or is it my thoughts? And so a very simple question that you can ask yourself if you are not fully 100% aligned with like giving up the idea of being in a relationship, you can just question your thoughts. You can see them and ask them, is it true? Like, is it really, really true? And I'm making some reference to the work of Byron Katie, who has some question that's help you see your thoughts and see when they're not supporting you, when not they're not helping you. So the first thing for me is kind of making a bridge in what seems like a very solid belief, like it's almost a reality. It is the truth with a big T. Starting to question, is it true? What if I decided to play the kind of the devil's advocate and see maybe it's not true? And is there evidence for it not to be true?
Yeah.
So started to investigate, yeah, like putting in question these thoughts, and then what would you want to believe otherwise? What would you want to think? Maybe the opposite example, that is, there's somebody out there for me. Potentially there's somebody, and starting to nourish and to cultivate that thoughts. But maybe we will talk more in another episode about how to do this, because there's a lot of information, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I guess wherever in your life, in your stage, wherever you are, you can always use whichever the tool necessary for you to ask yourself if you really want to continue in this state, basically, right? So, whatever the feeling it's generating for you, this thought of no one is out there for me, whatever the impact of this for you, question it if this is how you want to continue having these feelings. Because if that's not really what you want to be having, continue having, then you have the agency to change it. And I think this is essentially what we're saying with Pauline, is that whatever the state of emotional state we're in, um, we can change that if we want to. And the other thing that I'm noticing as well is that whenever we are saying that there is no one out there for me, we're actually also saying to the universe that I'm not available. I don't know if you noticed this irony. But anyway, so essentially, whenever we are believing this, it means that we are putting ourselves in the non available condition, and
Mm,
therefore we're not even open to any suggestions, any possibilities, I guess. So that's why if you don't want to do this to yourself, then you have the agency to change. And the other thing I think in this context that comes up a lot is that the topic of, well, it doesn't really depend on me. I think that's maybe something that
mm,
we could address in another episode, right? Of it doesn't really depend on me, because in order for the relationship to work, there has to be two people. I think I hear this a lot, and it would be great to also address this in another episode. But notice that even though you may be believing that to be true, what if you could do a lot in the relationship? Or what if you could already start doing your part to create conditions for the relationship? Um, so the idea behind this is actually that let's get yourself out from your state of being or state of emotional condition by questioning it, by knowing that you can do something about it, instead of using it as a conclusion or as a complaint against yourself and just being in that state. I don't know. Any last points, Pauline, you want to mention here?
No, I'm good. So I'm finishing with have agency and power over your life and over your love life is yes, would be the last word for me. Definitely.
Amazing. So this is what we have for you today. Any of the things that we talked about, we try to not give a lot of information as you noticed, because we know that it might be a lot of input for you to digest and process. So that's why if you want any coaching on this, or if you let us know anything that's unclear or want clarification, we're happy to do that. But we continue talking about these type of beliefs in the future, and you will also maybe hear more of what to do and how to deal with it, like Pauline was saying. Thank you so much, Pauline, for being here and talking about this topic that is very dear to my heart. I feel like everything is dear to my heart, but anyway, first-hand experience. So um, there is always a solution, I guess, is what we're saying. Having said that, have an amazing week, and we'll talk to you next Tuesday.
Bye.